This is the video for LEMONS, Listenable Explanations for Music Recommender Systems. In short, we address the issue of explaining of why a track has been recommended to a user by providing listenable explanations based on the track itself. In the first part of our demo, we can select one among 7 users belonging to the taste profile dataset. And each of these real users is characterized by a distinctive music preference. For example, we can see that Marco listens to reggae and loud music, Paige follows popular music, or for example, Elizabeth that mostly listens to rock, alternative metal, and heavy metal. When we select an user, their user profile will pop up below. And here we will have a short description of the musical preferences. And as we said, Elizabeth likes rock, alternative metal, and heavy metal. Some music listening statistics. In this case, she listened to more or less 800 tracks. And lastly, we can also explore the music she listened to. And the tracks here are sorted by number of times played. Using the track the user listened to, we can then ask the content-based recommender system to generate new recommendation. First of all, we have to select the dataset for which we want to receive the recommendations. We can either go for MuseDB18 or the Million Song dataset. For example, if we decide for MuseDB18, we receive the following recommendations, and the recommendations will change if we also change the dataset. In this case, we will receive other recommendations. The recommendations are then sorted by relevance for the user. In this case, as we can see, all of these tracks have a score close to 1, means that they are pretty much relevant for the user. We can select one of these tracks, for example, Desire to Fire. And we can listen to the track in the audio player that will appear now. And in the following track, we can distinguish three main parts. In the first part, the guitar and the drums will play. In the second part, the rhythm of the drums will change, becoming more intense. And lastly, in the third part, we will only hear the vocals and the guitar.
Desire to fire, electric spark to the wire. Higher the stakes when we brought this monster life. Prevail by daring to fail. Others content just to sail.
We can then ask the system finally to provide a listenable explanation of why the track has been recommended to the user. To do so, we use the recently proposed tool, audioLIME. Which explains the prediction of a complex system by identifying the components of the input that contributed the most. In our case, we want to explain why a track has been recommended by identifying the most important listenable components of the audio track. And depending on how we define these listenable components, we have 3 types of explanations. Time-based explanations identify which are the snippets or the moments of the audio track that influence the recommendation the most. But we can also select source-based type of explanations, which instead rely on the source separation tool splitter, which identify in this case the source or the instrument that influence the recommendation the most. And lastly, we can actually combine the previous 2 approaches using time and source based explanations. In this case, they identify both the snippet and the source that influenced the recommendation the most. For example, it may be that the guitar at the beginning of the track is, or is that what actually was the key element for the recommendation, or maybe the vocals during the chorus. We can select time plus source, which is the most flexible and more fine-grained approach, and we can then compute the explanations. The first thing that we can see is the fidelity. In this case, the fidelity tells us how much we can trust the following explanations, and if the tool is actually providing good explanations of the recommendation. In this case, the fidelity is high, and it means that we can trust the explanations that we can see. And we can see we provide two interfaces for interacting with the listenable explanations. The first one is top highlight, which answers the question, what is the component of the audio that influenced the recommendation the most? And in this case, as we can see, and we will hear, the component that influenced the recommendation the most, why the track has been recommended to the user, are the vocals in the last part of the track, from the second 24 to the second 30.
Life prevail by daring to fail. Others content just to sail.
And we can also ask the system instead to provide the top three components and of the audio that influence the recommendation the most. In this case, we can see that the top three components belong to three different sources in three different moments in time. In this case, will be the vocals, the drums, and other, which in this case will be the guitar. And in the first part of the explanations, we can see that the reason is the guitar, and this is the reasonable explanation, since the guitar is a key element of rock music that Elizabeth likes. But then when the rhythm changes, and even if the guitar is still playing, the drums actually take over, since this type of rhythm is also pretty much present also in heavy metal, alternative metal. And lastly, we can hear the voice, which is also typical of this type of music.
Life prevail by daring to fail. Others content just to sail.
And all of these are reasonable explanation, since these elements are also, as I said, present in the music that the user listens to. Lastly, on the left side of our demo, we have a scrollable sidebar, which provides clarification on how the explanations and the recommended system work.